Hi, I'm Livia, and at my husband's funeral, his brother got the mansion, the money, everything. They handed me an old box and said, "That's all he left you." I almost believed them until I found what was hidden inside. A secret from 1970, 1,000 forgotten shares, and a tape that could destroy everything they built. I thought the loss ended that day, but that box was only the beginning. It was one of those Texas mornings where the sky looks heavy, like it might cry but can't quite bring itself to. The air clung to my skin, thick with October heat and the scent of funeral flowers. I sat in the back row of the chapel, alone, deliberately. My husband's ex-wife was front and center, flanked by their 2 grown children, like a royal court mourning a king. No one looked back at me. No one nodded. I don't know what I expected. A mention in the eulogy, maybe. Some acknowledgement that I existed in his life. But the preacher spoke as if his entire story ended the day their divorce papers were signed. A devoted father, a loyal friend, a decorated veteran. Not a word about the woman he married 5 years ago. Not a word about me. Murmurs buzzed like flies after the service. I caught the side eyes, the too tight smiles. "She didn't even take his last name," someone whispered behind a gloved hand. I had half a mind to turn around, but I didn't. When they read the will, right there in the lounge over weak coffee, I found out just how forgotten I really was. Everything. The house, the accounts, the boat, even the damn lawnmower. All of it went to his children. Not even a note for me. I didn't expect millions, but a token? A gesture? And that's when he appeared. He looked like he belonged in another decade, tweed coat, thinning hair, eyes the color of wet slate. He stood beside my chair without a word for several seconds, just watching me. Then, he handed me a box, small and worn, wrapped in twine like a gift from a forgotten era. "He wanted you to have this," the man said. His voice was low and even, with the kind of calm that made me feel like I should already know what it meant. I opened my mouth to ask, "Who are you? Why you? Why this?" But he was already walking away, lost in a sea of black suits and polite grief. The box felt heavier than it should have. No label, no name, no lock. Just aged wood, wrapped like a secret. My mind flashed to a conversation we had months ago, sitting on the back porch after one of his rare sentimental moods. He'd said, "The real wealth isn't in my will, Madeline. Paper can lie, but time reveals the truth." Back then, I thought he was just waxing poetic, maybe a little drunk. Now, that line echoed like a warning. I drove home with the box on the passenger seat, my hand resting on top of it like it might fly open or disappear. But I didn't open it. Not yet. I placed it in the trunk and slammed it shut. The house was too quiet without him. It wasn't grief I felt, not really. More like a dizzy blend of insult and confusion. I paced for hours. I tried to distract myself, fed the dog, checked the mail, stared at the fridge like it might give me answers. At one point, I picked up our wedding photo. His smile looked more forced now. My eyes looked naive. There were things I'd let slide. The way he changed the subject whenever money came up. The fact that I never met his financial advisor. The way he corrected me in front of people, like I didn't know the difference between gross and net. I poured a glass of wine I didn't want and stood by the window, wondering how long this new version of my life would take to sink in. Then the phone rang. It was his daughter, the older one. Cold voice, clipped words. "We're going to handle the estate properly. I hope you won't make things difficult." That was it. No hello. No condolences. I said nothing for a beat. Then, "You got the estate." "I got a box." She hesitated, then hung up. That was the moment I knew, this wasn't just about grief. This was about being erased. I grabbed the box from the trunk and brought it inside. Set it down on the kitchen table like it was a guest I didn't invite but had to entertain. For a while, I just looked at it. Fingers resting on the twine, breathing slow. I unwrapped it like it might explode. Inside was a mess of old papers, the smell of mildew and forgotten things rising like ghosts. There were envelopes, receipts, yellowed newspaper clippings. And then, tucked between 2 faded photographs, I found it, a stock certificate. 1,000 shares, Anacor Mining Inc. I froze. The name rang a bell. Anacor, copper, something he'd mumbled about once, tracing the rim of his coffee cup. Put some money in copper back when I was stationed in Arizona, he'd said. Never touched it again. I opened my laptop and typed in the company name. Anacor had merged with a global firm years ago. Still active, still trading. The certificate shook in my hand. Not from the weight of its value, but from the implications. Why didn't he tell me? Why wasn't this in the will? I sat back in the chair, staring at the paper like it might blink or speak. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay awake with the certificate beside me on the nightstand like a new kind of vow. I sat at the kitchen table, the certificate still lying exactly where I left it. The box was open, its contents spread like fragments of someone else's life, a man I thought I knew. The clock read 2:13 a.m., but sleep wasn't even in the rearview mirror. My laptop glowed in the dark, casting long shadows across the counter. I typed the company name into the search bar, Anacor Mining Inc. A list of dusty old links popped up. Most were dead. Then I found it, a merger notice from 1998. Anacor had folded into Krallman Metals, now a giant in the energy sector. My heart beat faster as I followed the breadcrumb trail. An archived finance forum from 2003 had a thread on legacy shares. One user listed known serial numbers still redeemable, including the exact number on my certificate. I double-checked. Then a third time. It matched. I leaned back. My late husband knew. He had to. This wasn't forgotten in a drawer, it was preserved. Tucked away. Meant for someone. Meant for me? And yet, he never spoke of it. Not once, even as we paid off credit cards late, argued about groceries, skipped vacations. Was this supposed to be his version of atonement? Or just another manipulation? I didn't cry. I didn't feel grateful either. If anything, it was insult dressed as inheritance. A riddle left behind instead of a real goodbye. The house was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator. I closed the laptop, turned off the light, and started cleaning up the papers when the phone rang. I jumped. It was nearly 3 a.m. The screen flashed, private number. Against better judgment, I picked up. Livia. The voice was low, oily. Familiar. Alden? My voice was cold. I already knew. I just wanted to check in, he said, smooth as melted butter. Make sure you're adjusting. Moving on. Quietly. I didn't answer. There's no need to stir up old dust. Sometimes digging up the past can hurt the living more than it ever hurts the dead. My grip tightened. I didn't ask for anything, I said flatly. But the truth arrived anyway. He paused. A quiet inhale. Well, some things are better left buried. Especially for your sake. Then he hung up. I stared at the phone like it might explode. That call wasn't about concern. It was a warning. They knew. About the box, the certificate, maybe more. Whatever fear I had left curdled into resolve. They expected me to fold. To cry, maybe. To retreat. But the rules had changed. By sunrise, I still hadn't slept. But I did something better. I called Serena. She picked up on the third ring. Livia, are you okay? I told her everything. The will. The box. The certificate. She didn't interrupt, not once. Then she said, come to Denny's. I'm already on my second cup of bad coffee. We met in our usual booth, the one by the window. The sun hadn't fully crept over the rooftops yet. I ordered toast I wouldn't eat. I slid the certificate across the table. She looked at it like I'd just handed her a live wire. You're kidding, she whispered. My dad worked in mining law. Anacor's one of those companies that still haunts courtrooms. I remember the case. Unclaimed shares, misfiled paperwork, it was a mess. If this is real, it could be worth a lot. I nodded, trying not to get ahead of myself. Why would he leave this for me, like this? Serena frowned. Because if it's contested in probate, they might say it was a gift, not inheritance. Legally safer. But it also means people might come after you. My appetite vanished completely. She scribbled a name on a napkin. Talked to her. She doesn't play golf with Alden. That one sentence settled something in my chest. Someone was in my corner. By late morning, I was back home. The box still sat where I left it, gaping open. I started putting things back in, trying to keep them in order. That's when I found the letter. It was folded between pages of an old business magazine. I almost missed it. Yellowed. Faint handwriting. Dated 1982. Not addressed to me, but to someone it called, the one who outlasts the noise. I read it slowly. The ink had faded, but the words hit sharp. If you find this, you weren't meant to inherit silence. I read that line twice. 3 times. Then I sat down, hard. It wasn't a gift. It was a challenge. The rest of the letter rambled, half memory, half warning. But the final line stopped my breath. Check the safe deposit box I never got to close. I folded it back up, hands trembling. This wasn't over. It hadn't even started. That night, I didn't sleep. Again. But this time, it wasn't grief keeping me awake. It was the letter's final line that burned behind my eyes. I woke early and found the folded letter on the kitchen counter. It looked harmless enough, yellowed edges, faded ink, but the words inside were anything but quiet. I reread the line again. Check the safe deposit box I never got to close. I turned it over in my mind like a link in a chain. What did it open? What had he been carrying all this time? Later, I retrieved the business magazine from the box in the trunk. It sat there on the shelf, mundane until I slid the cover back and found an envelope taped inside. No name, just initials, RH, my husband's initials. I held the key between 2 fingers, the cool metal engraved faintly. Houston, he said, small bank, once, many years ago. I followed that memory to Bay South Federal. Something inside me shifted. I wasn't just curious anymore, I was searching. By mid-morning I had parked downtown, the sun already burning through the glass canopy of the bank's lobby. I felt out of place, uneasy. The building had brass doors and an old flag in the lobby. I met Mr. Dalton at the desk. He asked for my ID, the death certificate. My hands shook, even as I handed over the key. He looked at it, then nodded. This box hasn't been opened in over 30 years. The vault door rolled open, the mechanical whir sounding like a breath exhaled in slow motion. I watched the safety box slide out for me. I realized this wasn't about inheritance, this was about truth. I placed the box on the desk knowing full well nothing would be the same after I opened it. Inside was a small envelope addressed, for Livia, if she ever finds her way here. I opened it, then noticed the ledger book, names and numbers that looked like lifelines. And the cassette tape. Alden, meeting 1989. I felt a twist in my gut. Alden, my brother-in-law. What in the world? I tucked the tape away quietly. Then I unfolded the letter. If Alden tells you I was crazy, play the tape. My heart iced over with that phrase. My husband knew Alden would betray me. I knew not simply that I was left out, but that the story was orchestrated. As I stepped outside into the sunlight, my phone buzzed almost immediately. Della's name flashed. I answered. Her tone was quiet, sharp. I heard you went downtown. Be careful what you think you're entitled to. Entitlement seems to run in your family, I said. She paused. The line went dead. I looked down at the tape in my hand. This wasn't just about money anymore, it was about control and secrets. I sealed the tape in a folder and headed for the car. The hum of the engine felt like the pulse of the next move. I don't know yet how this ends, but I do know the key I hold isn't for a safety box, it's for everything they tried to lock away. I walked into the house late, the Texas dusk already darkening the porch light. My bag felt heavier than it should. The cassette tape was in there, its label screaming, Alden, meeting 1989. I set it gently on the kitchen island and made coffee. The hum of the machine sounded louder than the neighborhood quiet. I kept thinking about the bank, about the key, the ledger book, that note. Everything was clicking into place. Except I still lacked one thing, their motive. I glanced at the family photo on his desk. My picture used to be there, once. Now I saw only his father and sister, the two grinning like they ran an empire. My image had been edited out. I stood there for a long moment. I didn't cry. My face felt tight. I thought, this isn't about money. It has always been about erasing me. Then my phone buzzed. A text from Serena. We need to talk. Now. My heart skipped. Fear and a strange kind of relief washed through me. I locked the front door and went to the living room. I sat the tape on the coffee table and turned off the lights. Only the pool table light above, dim, flickering. The cassette deck clicked. I pushed play. The voice was unmistakable, my husband and Alden, talking in hushed tones, but the words cut clear. She's teaching. Let her teach while we handle the board. Then, she deserves the old box. Let's keep the shares hidden. I leaned forward. My hands stilled. My job, my loyalty, my role, they'd all been dismissed. As if I was invisible. I rewound. I listened again. Then sat back, jaw clenched. Betrayal confirmed. This tape wasn't just proof, it was a mirror. I scribbled a note, dead silent. Not anger. Not tears. Just acceptance and calculation. I knew tomorrow I would share this with Serena and the lawyer. Tonight I listened alone. Morning came too fast. We met at the neighborhood cafe, the gray light seeped through the windows. Serena's face was calm but serious. I pushed the tape across the table, she looked at it like it had teeth. "This is your line in the sand," she said. I inhaled. I felt tension in every muscle. I shared something new. At the funeral, during lunch, I'd been cut off mid-sentence. Only Della continues speaking, no one noticed. They didn't just exclude me, they silenced me, I told her. She nodded, her jaw tight. She reached into her purse, pulled out the certificate and the tape. "Tonight," she said, "we move." A firm decision settled inside me. Strategy, not reaction. I drove home, the city waking around me. I entered my home office, cleared a chair, opened my laptop. I typed an email to Ms. Ramirez, bank key, certificate number, pictures of the tape label. I quoted, "Courage is what it takes to stand up and speak. Courage is also what it takes to sit down and listen." My fingers trembled slightly as I pressed send. The fight wasn't loud. It was measured. I closed the laptop. The room was quiet. I wasn't waiting anymore. I was planning. Outside, the porch light blinked. I checked my phone. A voicemail, Alden's name on the screen. I didn't press play yet. I didn't have to. The game shifted tonight. I listened to the voicemail again, just to hear his voice flatly tell me he hoped I wasn't chasing ghosts. Alden's words cut through the darkness like an alarm bell. He sounded polite, controlled. Moving on quietly, he had said. But the tone behind it was anything but quiet. The key, the safe deposit box, the ledger, all of that was nothing compared to a voice that knows what you're about to uncover. When his words suggested some things were meant to stay in family hands, I felt something shift inside me, paranoia planting roots. Who else knows I'm here? Who's watching me pull at these threads? I deleted the voicemail but archived the file in the cloud. The cassette went back in the drawer. I knew something was coming, and I had to be ready. Later that evening, I tried to tidy the house, small distractions. While dusting old picture frames, I knocked down the one from our anniversary trip to Colorado. The glass cracked. The frame split open. Behind it, a yellowed envelope slid out and landed on the floor like a trap sprung. I touched the handwriting, his handwriting. "Do not open unless you have no choice." I froze. The envelope had no return address. I debated, but I picked it up. I sat in my living room, the last light fading, and cracked it open. Inside the letter were words I never expected. He suspected Alden of hiding assets, manipulating our trust, planning moves I couldn't see. He referenced Serena's father by name. "Your friend's dad warned me long ago, Alden's loyalty ends where the money starts." I pressed the letter hard into my palm until the edges dug in. The final line, "If you found this, they've come for everything. Don't let them." Nothing would ever look the same. I realized the old wooden box wasn't just a container, it was the spark of a reckoning. My mind drifted back to 1985, my husband's garage, his face tight, Alden's voice quiet and urgent, crossed wires. "Keep things tight." I remembered the metallic smell of his toolbox, the way the light slanted across the floorboards at dusk. Now, with the ledger in hand and the certificate sitting on my desk, I saw the pattern. Alden controlled the family trust. My husband hid the shares. The gift, disguised as inheritance, was a delayed reveal. They built the boardroom, the legacy, the empire around his silence and mine. Rage and grief mixed inside me. I thought of every time I backed down, smiled at another dinner party, let the conversation move past me. Not anymore. I promised myself I would act, not just for me, but to dismantle the pattern of being overlooked. I spent the night preparing. On my desk, scans of the certificate, the yellowed letter, photos of the frame fault, the audio file waiting to upload. I sent everything to Ms. Ramirez. I titled a new document, "What They Took From Me." Time, voice, truth. I practiced saying it aloud. You don't get to erase someone by excluding them. I'm still here. My voice didn't shake. I knew what I wanted. Then there was a knock. The kind of knock that stops you mid-heartbeat. When I opened the door, it was a courier, an official envelope addressed to me. The top line, Alden's name. My stomach flipped. This wasn't just about me anymore. The fight loomed ahead, it was real, and it began with me. I sat at my desk before sunrise, the house quiet, the coffee mug heavy in my hand. On the table lay the certificate from Anacor, the cassette tape, the folded letter in the sleeve. I laid them out like pieces of a case I was determined to win. I remembered the quote I used to read in leadership books: "Plans are nothing, planning is everything." I wasn't planning revenge, I was planning clarity. Mid-morning, I met Serena and Ms. Ramirez in a modest cafe off the highway. We pushed aside sugar bowls and menus, set folders between us. Ms. Ramirez opened mine and kept her gaze sharp. "You have something very few people ever get, a toast document, a tape, and certificates. We'll proceed as evidence, not emotion." I nodded, feeling a calm settle in, though I knew the anxiety was still simmering below. Moving from being overlooked to being the one to act, it carried its own weight. I zipped my binder closed, stepped into the afternoon sun, ready for next moves. We sifted through old news articles, Anacor's merger, unclaimed asset lawsuits, legal threads. Serena's phone lit up with headlines, bringing context to the ledger's names and the certificate in my hand. Ms. Ramirez pointed out the weak spots. Alden and Della's inheritance didn't match the paperwork. The letter named me, their public story excluded me. I realized this was bigger than me, it was a system built on silence and erasure. I felt less powerless than ever. Serena and I agreed, we'll release the tape quietly to a trusted investigative journalist. Let the public see what they tried to hide. The cafe hum around us faded as I reflected on how I once felt invisible. Now I was creating footsteps others would follow. That afternoon I sat alone in my office again, sent an encrypted link with the cassette audio and the letter scans. No sender name, just a subject. As promised, here's the missing piece. I exhaled slowly. I glanced at my spreadsheet of shares from 1970, adjusting for today's value. The certificate wasn't just money, it was a symbol of every time I was ignored. I texted myself, "They'll know within 24 hours. My heart fluttered, not from fear, but from the gravity of what was coming. I closed the laptop and the silence wrapped around me like a cloak. I wasn't waiting anymore, I was orchestrating. Despite the strategy, a hollow ache settled in. I should have felt victory, but until this is over, emptiness sits next to resolve. My husband once told me, secrets are safe until the wrong person finds them. How right he was. I walked through that house, the unspoken stories echoing in every framed photo and book about leadership on his shelf. Now those objects looked like complicit witnesses. I set an alarm for early the next day. Call the banker, follow up with the journalist, prepare for what comes next. The headline flashed on my phone, "Family Shipping Heir's Fortune Under Investigation." I pressed stop and exhaled. The first move was made. Now I watched them move, and I was ready for checkmate. I walked into the Atlanta boardroom with a quiet confidence. The building's lobby felt cold, corporate, just the kind of place where power lives behind polite handshakes. Clerks greeted me, offered a nod, and held the door open. I carried a thin legal folder and the box key, but more than that, I carried my voice. When I entered the room, I found Alden and Della seated among company directors, everything so polished. The air seemed thicker than the chandelier light. I placed the letter from my husband and the stock certificate on the table. The directors shifted, you could feel the change in the hum. I said, "I believe you thought the story ended at the funeral." That sentence landed like a stone. Alden's smile faltered, Della's jaw clenched. The screen flickered and the audio I released hours ago began to play, Alden admitting asset redirects. The room froze. I felt a roar inside me, even as they stared speechless. The chair occupied by Della had the green napkin beneath, an echo of something dismissed long ago. The managing director broke the silence, "I think we need to adjourn." And just like that, the boardroom exploded in motion. Within an hour I found myself escorted into a media briefing room. Reporters gathered, Georgia Business News, national outlets, lights, cameras. A headline flashed, "Family Fortune in Dispute." Documents reveal long-buried betrayal. I walked to the podium in first person. My father loved me more than silence. I stand here owing nothing but the truth. The flashbulbs popped. Alden and Della sat behind me, faces pale under the lights. A reporter asked, "Are you seeking revenge?" I answered, "I seek recognition, for myself and for everyone erased quietly." The room shifted. I wasn't smaller than them anymore. Rage coursed through me, but it was precise, sharpened by years of being ignored. It wasn't about tearing down, it was about being seen. The story spun forward and I became its center. After the media session, the counter-strike began. Alden issued a statement calling the tape unauthorized and manipulated. News alerts crashed across my phone. Family legal team files misdemeanor charges. Serena message. Now they play dirty. I paused in my office, breathed slowly, then forwarded the forensic audio, the letter scans, the timeline of transfers to the lead story reporter. I knew this 24-hour window could make or break me. But I leaned into the storm. I thought of Brian Stevenson's words, "Know your rights, assert your rights, fight your rights." Tension and exhilaration tangled in me. This was not a silent victory, it was the beginning of public reckoning. The next morning I sat at the kitchen table with my coffee, watching the news. Della had resigned publicly. The firm's release admitted the inherited stock needs independent review. I felt a quiet victory, no cheering, no celebration. Just relief. Serena called. "You did this." I looked at the green napkin in a photo, the one on Della's chair from the boardroom, and realized my old exclusion had become their exposure. My invisibility was gone. Then my phone rang. The caller ID read, "Unknown." I answered and a calm male voice said, "We need to talk about the next 1,000 shares." My chest tightened with relief and anxiety both. The reckoning had unfolded, but the game was only shifting. I walked into the TV studio lobby during the golden hour, the sun dipping low over Atlanta's skyline, heavy with promise. I felt the microphone clipped to my jacket like a weight I had earned. The screen behind me flickered with the image, the green napkin from the funeral table, now framed inside an infographic. Next to it, the certificate of shares. My hands clasped behind my back, I looked straight into the lens and said, "Good evening. I'm not here to ask for justice, I'm here to state a fact they tried to bury." The words settled into the quiet hum of cameras. On the feed I watched Alden and Della, they were pale and rigid. The tape played, Alden's voice admitting redirected assets. I felt triumph yield unexpectedly to shock. The moment I feared for years became the moment I reclaimed, in full view of the world. The newsrooms scrambled, headlines flashed, "Family Fortune War," and "Forgotten Shares Spark Explosive Claim." Alden's team fired back, press release claiming documents were unauthenticated, and a PR damage control squad assembled in hours. Meanwhile, I sat at my desk in Houston, cross-referencing ledgers and watching share value climb in tiny increments. Ms. Ramirez called. "They're backing away from the trust fund, but they've opened a criminal investigation into leaks." My stomach pinched but my voice stayed steady. I realized this fight was no longer about winning one claim, it was about enduring their reaction. I leaned into the storm. Victory doesn't look like a parade. It looks like calm in the chaos. I posted my own story later that day, under my name, for once. My name is Livia Norman. And I was erased. The article laid out how unclaimed shares from 1970 still circulate, how trust funds exploit silence, how families hide power behind polite dinners. I quoted Maya Angelou, "There is no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside you." Then I invited others, invisible heirs like me, to come forward. Della's blog post appeared next, regret for miscommunication. Alden remained silent. I felt empowered, not by money or title, but by voice and control of my past. The settlement came before dawn the next day. I received the 1,000 shares and an undisclosed cash payout. Alden resigned. I could have taken the mansion, the company car, the facade of success they offered. But I chose only the shares. The green napkin that started it all? I folded it, framed it in my study. I phoned Serena. "We did it, but I am not the same woman who walked into that funeral." I felt bittersweet victory. The scars were still there. The healing had begun. Then my phone rang. Caller ID. Unknown. I answered and a calm male voice said, "We need to talk about the next 1,000 shares." I closed my eyes. The final move had been exposed, but the game was far from over. It had been exactly 1 month since the settlement. I packed light, just an overnight bag, a journal, and that framed napkin, then drove the 2 hours to the lake house. No one had touched the place in years. The porch still creaked the same way it did when I was 12, sneaking out late just to sit by the water and think. Pine needles scattered the steps. The air smelled like memory, wet earth, old wood, and quiet. That kind of quiet you only get where phones don't buzz. I stepped inside and found it all waiting. Dusty, yes, but familiar. On the mantel sat a small box I hadn't thought about in decades. Inside, my crayon drawings of birds, a faded camp ribbon, and 2 notes my father wrote me before he went overseas. They were simple things, just little messages from another time. I sat in the old wicker chair, the same one with the frayed arms, and lit a candle for my mother. Not out of sorrow, just a kind of peace. That chair had held my restlessness once. Now, it held something else entirely. Later that night, I opened the safe deposit envelope again. Beneath the settlement documents and the tape's final certification was something I'd missed. A second envelope. I paused. It wasn't labeled, just sealed, thick, old. My hands shook a little. Inside was a letter. Handwritten. My husband's handwriting. If you're reading this, you already know the truth. He wrote of how he had discovered the shares years before. How he suspected Alden and Della were hiding them. How he found the green napkin folded in the corner of Roscoe's attic, how it haunted him. But he felt trapped, powerless, and guilty. I left them in that box, hoping you'd find them. Not because I thought you would win, but because I knew you were the only one strong enough to try. I didn't cry for his silence. I cried because he believed in my strength when he couldn't find his own. I folded the letter, slid it into the pages of my journal, and closed the book without another word. That was closure. His silence wasn't cruelty, it was fear in the shape of love. Weeks passed. I didn't retreat, I re-entered. I funded a nonprofit for financial literacy, focused on women over 50 who'd been written off, underestimated, or simply overlooked. We held workshops, helped them find unclaimed retirement, investments, or just their own worth. At one event, Serena and I shared the stage. She said, "Justice delayed is still justice served." I told them, "Silence is not your inheritance." Later, I launched a podcast, The Unforgotten. Real stories, real voices, real power in being heard. Then came the last decision. I returned to the firm one final time. No lawyers, no cameras, just me. Alden was gone. His chair was filled by someone half his age, who greeted me with a firm handshake and gratitude. They offered a plaque in my name. I said, "Put that money into your staff's wellness program." As I turned to leave, I saw Della waiting near the lobby. Her makeup lighter than usual. No jewelry, just her. "You could have destroyed me," she said. I held her gaze. Maybe I still could, but that's not how I want to be remembered. And I meant it. I walked out of that building, not carrying bitterness, not proving a point, just moving forward. The click of my heels on that polished floor echoed behind me like punctuation at the end of a sentence. Back at the lake house, I sat on the dock and tossed a smooth stone into the water. Watched the ripples stretch, then disappear. Stillness returned. Then my phone rang. A woman's voice, careful but direct. "I think you can help me."